Councillors' office and guests and members of the public, welcome to the Wednesday the 19th of April 2023 Development Assessment Committee meeting. I'll now open the meeting with present apologies. I note that all councillors are in attendance, with Councillor Edwards attending online. In accordance with Mirrabul Shire Council's governance rules, the meeting will be recorded and live streamed this evening. Councillors, items 4 and 5 on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes and the matters arising from the previous minutes. Councillors, are there any matters arising from the previous minutes? No? Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation to confirm those minutes? Councillor Minari. Seconded, Councillor Berry. All in favour? Carried. Councillors, items number 6 is the disclosure of conflicts of interest. I do ask councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare tonight's meeting? Duly noted. No conflicts of interest. Item number 7, community planning reports. Item number 7.1 is the first item on the agenda. It's the use and the development of a function centre, works to an existing hotel and variation to the liquor licence at the Plough Hotel at 17 Main Street, Mooneyong. Councillors, we have 2 registered speakers, and I'll invite Mr James Robson of OTL Consulting Group, who is registered to speak to this item. Mr Robson, take the chair. You have the floor for 3 minutes, after which councillors may ask you clarifying questions if required.
Thank you, councillors. So this application relates to the Plough Hotel in Mooneyong, which has been operating as a hotel since for some 160 years. In short, the proposal is made to replace the existing temporary marquee structure, which was permitted in 2018, with a permanent structure to be used as a function centre to expand or extend or assist with the operations of the business. There are some sundry permit requirements associated with the site as well, which are to be tidied up. Included within the proposal is retrospective approval for some minor buildings and works that have been done to the heritage structure on the site over a number of years, and it also includes the variation of the red line plan attached to the liquor licence, which is largely just an administrative change. Operationally speaking, the business will largely remain unchanged as a result of the proposal. However, the new function room structure will better service the hotel's clientele and allow the business to better cater for events. The proposal will improve the economic viability of the existing business in line with planning scheme considerations. Generally speaking, we largely agree with the officer's recommendation report as contained within tonight's agenda. The proponent has, however, raised some concerns in relation to the nature of some of the conditions, specifically relating to the car park to the rear of the site on the unmade road reserve. The existing car park there was constructed by the proponents in 2019 at a significant cost of about $86,000 and was constructed, in their view, in line with permit conditions provided for within the previous permit issued. We say that the car park was constructed in line with the car park management plan endorsed by Council in 2018. We argue that the nature of the proposed conditions surrounding further investigations of the constructed car park can be considered unnecessary in the circumstances. The proponents are adamant that a council representative attended the site after those works were completed and verbally advised that they had been completed to an appropriate standard. Unfortunately, throughout the discussions with council officers in relation to this application, we have been advised that council are unable to locate any records associated with that visit. Further, we argue that the proposal in this instance does not propose an increase to patron numbers on the site. Therefore, there is no permit trigger associated with a waiver of car parking associated with the proposal. On this basis, we submit that the conditions associated with the car park to the rear should be reconsidered. We request councillors consider the appropriateness of the proposed conditions relating to the existing car park within the unmade road reserve to the rear of the site.
Thank you, Mr Robson. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr Robson? No? Thank you, Mr Robson. You can take your seat. Councillors, we also have Mark and Ruth Mills, who are registered to speak on this item, who I believe are attending online. We'll just wait for Mark and Ruth to join us.
Yeah, hi guys, we're here.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Ruth.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us online. You've registered to speak on this item. You have the floor for 3 minutes, after which councillors do have the opportunity to ask you questions.
Yep, no worries. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. This meeting has been a long time coming for everyone attached to the plough, my family, my staff, my suppliers, my customers, past and future. In early 2020, we agreed with Rob Village to close the marquee, replace it with a permanent structure. He told us the planning process would be expedited. However, here we are, 3 years later, presenting you to tonight. In those 3 years, it's been very hard on our business. We were forced to close the restaurant due to COVID for the benefit of the community. We have lost the opportunity of having the 16-year-olds working through our kitchens that would now become experienced waiters in our restaurant. We need to rebuild our reputation for hosting high-quality functions for milestone events in our shire, e.g. weddings, christenings, birthdays. Our philanthropic contribution has been halted, not being able to open to host major events for our community such as Lions, Rotary, Soul Food, sporting clubs. Even the students at the Bacchus Marsh Grammar doing hospitality haven't had the opportunity to do their training with us. All our suppliers also have suffered without that steady stream of functions being conducted at the plough. For example, Jones's Fruit and Veg, they were a victim also of what COVID delivered. We made it through, and however, we must catch up. We've been losing 20,000 per week in turnover for the last 3 years. We're here for the long haul. And a couple of weeks ago, Ruth discovered that my family is the third generation to have held a licence at the plough, first being in 45, second in 79, and myself since 2009. My 17-year-old daughter is planning on taking on the family business going forward, which is very exciting for me and very exciting for the community too, to have a business that will stay in the family for such a long time. And thank you to all the councillors who I've spoken to in the last couple of days. I know you know how much I appreciate your support. And if you have any queries or comments, please feel free to ask them. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ruth. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mark and Ruth? No? Thank you for joining us online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, would anyone like to speak to the motion?
I just have a question, if I
Councillor
may,
Sullivan.
Mr Mayor. Just with on condition 27G, where it refers to parking attendants must be present at all times to ensure free-flowing traffic movement within the site. I'm just sort of how that's going to sort of the relationship of that to just the use and development of the function centre. Does that mean there's going to have to be someone on duty at any time that business opens, or am I misreading that?
Mr Bazudnoud?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll pass on to Mr Lavelle to clarify.
So it's not the employment of an attendant by the hotel. It's simply just during those periods of starting functions and ending functions that they, of course, cars that are exiting site don't cause any disturbance to residents. So it's just for that short period of time to manage. As I said, you may have a function with quite a number of people and quite a number of cars leaving it all at the same time.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It is an unusual thing to have in here as a condition. Well, I suppose this is one of the rare occasions when we have the opportunity of seeing something that was already in motion because there was a temporary structure put in place. So I wonder what's brought that about. I mean, there was never an issue there, or there hasn't been a complaint made. Why all of a sudden was something that was working fine, all of a sudden we require a different ruling or a different condition? And my second question, if I can, because they're probably related, is that using the same ethos, here we are, that the parking area that's supplied for a number of years on the temporary conditions of the marquee were quite adequate, and yet all of a sudden they're not. And yet we have other hotels in, Bacchus Marsh is a classic example, where they have no parking whatsoever. But because of existing use, they get the whole main street. So it seems a little bit one-sided, that's all. So that's the question.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Again, I'll defer to Mr Bazoo now.
I suppose two parts of that. One, the car parking has been deemed adequate for including the permanent function centre. And two, the condition that was queried regarding the construction of that southern car park. That is basically to provide documentation to say, yes, it has got approval as a car park area, not actually having to do further works to that area. If the applicant can provide that documentation, then that will satisfy the condition.
Yep, Councillor Tatchell.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation with the amendment that be withdrawn in terms of needing someone to manage the parking in Murniong. I think it sets a dangerous precedent.
I'm happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
So just for clarity, you're recommending that we move the motion with the removal of item 27G. Councillor Dudzik?
You don't want to remove item 27 entirely, do you?
It's a mixture of item 27, so it would have to be broken down because you couldn't remove all of those.
Yep.
Do you want me to say it again?
Yes, please.
Unfortunately, Councillor, the problem I see is there's a whole heap of conditions within item 27 that whilst it needs to be dissected and some need to be taken out, it would be, you couldn't take them all out, otherwise we would create a problem. Now, if you'd like to name by which ones you could take out in alphabetical order, maybe we could create that amendment, but it is a bit policy on the run.
Councillor Dudzik?
Through the Mayor, if I can, are you aware if making that one change satisfies the concerns of the applicant?
Councillor Tatchell?
I didn't know our role was to satisfy the applicant. Our role was to do a planning decision, but I'm quite happy to, if you want to dissect that, I'm quite happy to add that to our conditions or withdraw that from conditions.
So, councillors, at this stage, we have a recommendation of approval with an amended recommendation moved by Councillor Tatchell, seconded by Councillor Berry, that the permit be approved with the removal of 27G, which would require the parking attendant. Councillors, does anyone else want to speak on that motion?
Just a question, so that if that alternate recommendation gets up, so the others would be renumbered from H down to P, is that what you're suggesting? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Fine. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? Anyone else want to speak on that motion? Okay, so we have a notice of motion to recommend the permit with the removal of item 27G with the subsequent numbers, conditions renumbered. Councillors, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll move on to item 7.2, which is the development of 3 dwellings at 25 Rosehill Drive. Again, councillors, we do have a registered speaker. I also wish to note that the applicant did apply to speak, but he's in a late apology tonight. He's flown into state for a family emergency, so he asked me to pass on his apologies, which I've now done. But Mr Shane Late, pardon me if I pronounce that wrong, has registered to speak. And Mr Late is in person, Mr Late.
Through you, Mr Mayor. He's online.
He's
now.
online.
Yep.
Welcome, Mr Late. Mr Late, welcome. I think you're on mute, Mr Late. We can't hear you.
Unmute. Okay, how are we going now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you very much. Welcome to the meeting. Yes, you now have the floor. You have 3 minutes to speak on this matter, after which councillors are free to ask you questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at the meeting on item 7.2 of the agenda. My name is Shane Late and I live at 1 Epsom Close, Bacchus Marsh, adjacent to the southern side of the proposed development for 3 dwellings on 25 Rosehill Drive, Bacchus Marsh. I had 3 areas of concern with the development proposal, and the first concern related to the calculated storm water runoff on the site, but this concern has been negated by the recommendations in the agenda at item 7.2, paras 7 to 9, noting that the para numbering has restarted again on page 20, so it restarts at 6 again on that, so I'm just including paragraphs 7 to 9 from the previous page. Okay. My second concern was the nature of the development that is not in keeping with all the other housing in the close, which also opens up the door for similar construction when other houses in the close are sold, and it is likely that the additional townhouses may replace them given the size of the blocks in question. Once again, this is negated by a statement in the agenda, item 7.2 at page 26. Under the summary of objections, under the overdevelopment and neighbourhood character objectives, where the officer's response identifies that the council considers that multi-unit developments are expected in a natural growth area. Yeah, we could contest that, but I don't think we would have much fortune in that area. The third concern, and this is the major concern, is over the number of driveways that will be built as a result of the development. It is contended that we have 11 driveways already in a small close, that the addition of an additional 2 driveways at the narrow throat of Epsom Close will create an entry-exit hazard to traffic. So without the addition of some parking nooks in the front of the properties, it is inevitable that the street parking will be dramatically reduce the access to all properties within the close. The visibility coming into the close is already very limited, as the approach from the west to the close is on a descent side, and the entry from the approaching curve on Rosehill Drive. It is highly likely that the 2 driveways in front of the throat of the close will result in future congestion and possible accidents, which in my opinion is an unavoidable and unnecessary risk. So on that basis, I am requesting that the council reconsider the planning request for 3 dwellings with 2 driveways entering that property.
Thank you, Mr Late. Councillors, any questions for Mr Late? Mr Late, thank you for your time tonight, and your comments are duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Would any councillors like to speak on the motion?
I'm happy to move the motion for approval.
Thank you. Motion moved by Councillor Dudzik, seconded by Councillor Minari. Councillors, any objections? All in favour? Carried. Councillors, item 7.3 is the use and development for a store self-storage facility, display of floodlit signage and a reduction of car parking at 47 Griffith Street, Mattingley. Councillors, in your documentation you have a recommendation of approval. Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? No, it's 7.4.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
So moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Councillors, any objections? All in favour? Carried. Councillor, 7.4, use and development for a medical centre, dental clinic, display of business identification signage including floodlit and internally illuminated signage, and alteration of access to a road in a transport zone at 52 to 54 Gisborne Road, Bacchus Marsh. Councillor, we have a number of registered speakers, the first being Mr Sean O'Keefe, who is registered to speak. Mr Keefe, please take the chair. As you would have heard earlier, you have 3 minutes to address the councillors, after which councillors are free to ask you questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. The application for this address was lodged in May 2022 and involves the extension of existing dental office clinic. In preparing the application, we considered the key planning issues with the design, traffic and parking, amenity and signage. In response to these issues, we note car parking and traffic arrangements are considered appropriate by council engineers and planners and Regional Roads Victoria, and we exceed the statutory requirement for car parking spaces by 1. We consider the proposed building extension acceptable for neighbourhood character and compatible with the neighbouring residential amenity. It is single-storey in height and the site will be fully landscaped. As for the signage, it is reflective of the design and context of the building and is discreet. We note council officers have recommended a number of conditions requiring minor amendments to the signage, and we agree with those conditions. Now, Mr Mayor, we've liaised with council officers throughout this process. It's been going for nearly a year now, and provided further information as required. We note there are no changes to the current hours of operation, which are 8 a.m. Monday to Friday, 6 p.m, and then on Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m, and these are standard business hours. Gisborne Road itself contains numerous uses and the road is in transition. Now, just recently going out there, I noticed a petrol station, dance studio, chiropractor, sleep therapist, dentist, osteopathy, medical clinic under construction, and an ambulance depot, all along that road. Council policy generally encourages non-commercial uses in residential areas and on major roads such as Gisborne Road, where they serve local needs. So in summary, the proposed medical centre will provide for the growing needs of the Bacchus Marsh and Moorabool community and will contribute to the local economy. It is located on a busy road on the periphery of the Bacchus Marsh Activity Centre, is an extension to an existing lawful and permitted use, and it's in keeping with the planning scheme requirements, and I note supported by your officers. So we request your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr O'Keefe. Councillors, any questions from Mr O'Keefe? No? Thank you for your time. Councillors, we have three registered speakers. I understand the first speaker will be speaking on behalf of all three. Lisa, can you hear me? Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Lisa, thank you for your submission of your written objection. I understand you were quite nervous speaking to council tonight, so please don't be. Council has had an opportunity to review your statement. Did you want to speak further on this statement, or were you quite happy for me to defer to councillors to ask you any questions?
I'm quite happy to defer to council. Firstly, I just did want to thank the committee for taking the time to consider our statement. I am representing both neighbours, which are directly opposite the dental clinic as well. They've both contacted me and asked me to put forward. They're elderly and they have asked me to submit statements on their behalf. So I'm also representing them tonight.
So, councillors, just to, for clarity there, Lisa also submitted written statements on behalf of Lucille Wheelerhan and Kim Delahaye, which we've also received. So thank you very much for doing that for your neighbours, Lisa.
No problem. It's very important to us, so I was happy to help.
Councillors, I now open the floor for any questions you may have for Lisa or of Lisa on behalf of Lucille's and Kim's written statements.
I'd like a question to officers.
Yes, Councillor Dudzik.
I've got a question to officers, and it's really for clarification for the objectors. With the recommendation that's in the council papers, it does address the concerns of the nearby neighbours in relation to having lights illuminated, doesn't it? And would you like to tell us how it does that? They're not going to be left on late at night?
Mr Bazudnad or Mr Lovell?
On to Mr Lavelle.
Yeah, so in the proposed conditions, if you go to condition 15, sign illumination must only occur during approved hours of operation. So that applies to existing signage and any proposed signage. So the effect of that condition is that any illumination of signs cannot occur after the closing time, which is 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 1 p.m. on Saturdays. So there'll be no lights at night from signage.
Thank you, Mr Lovell.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Lisa, thank you for attending tonight, and thank you again for taking the time to put in the 3 submissions for yourself and on behalf of your 2 neighbours. Thank you. Councillors,
I'm happy to move the recommendation of approval.
just waiting for our guests to leave the screen. Councillors, I'll just throw it open first of all. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Any questions? No? So we have Councillor Dudzik who's moved the motion. Councillor Sullivan has seconded the motion.
Oh, sorry, Mr Mayor. It's not really a question, it's a comment. I'd like to commend the officers on respectfully having the number of car parking situations. In fact, we got one more car space, which is a really good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. So we have a mover for the motion. We have a seconder for the motion. Any objections? All in favour? Carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item 7.5, which is 20 dwellings and a reduction at car parking at 24 Griffith Street, Mattingley. Councillors, again, I note that we have a speaker on this item who is joining us online. So, Mr Joseph Daru, just wait for Joseph to appear on the screen. Joseph, can you hear me? Joseph, can you hear me? Joseph. Joseph, can you hear us?
Hello, I can hear you now.
Yes, that's great.
For having me.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So we're up to item 7.5 on the agenda, which is the item you've registered to speak for, which is regard to 20 dwellings and a reduction in car parking at 24 Griffith Street. So, Joseph, you have the floor for 3 minutes, after which councillors will have the opportunity to ask you any questions. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and my apologies, I'm unable to be there in person tonight. I had originally planned to, but had some family circumstances that meant that I couldn't get down there. First of all, I'd like to say we've had a great experience in dealing with the Moorabool Shire Council in the last couple of years with the approval and now the commenced development of the childcare centre site adjacent to the property in question. And it's good to see, really pleasing for me to see this project coming to life, and we felt that the subsequent application on the balance of the original lot for 20 dwellings would be quite a suitable use, given the general residential 3 zoning and the schedule to that zone that speaks about increased residential growth areas. And I think it sits within precinct 29 in the Housing Bacchus Marsh strategy, which talks about that increased residential growth area. So we designed the project or the development to be a multi-unit development and address that increased residential development and residential growth. We've tried our best to accommodate the existing neighbourhood character and taken that into account. And naturally, when we're going to be building an increased density of dwellings, there is going to be some bulk, but the benefit of this site and the way it's set out, where it does slope off Inglis Street, it will provide some natural augmentation or through the buildings being stepped down across the site. I know councils or the council officers have raised some other concerns around overdevelopment, and the zone does note up to a 70% site coverage. Our design currently stands at a 46% site coverage and is above the 35% landscape area. So we feel that we're not really overdeveloping the site when we're well inside the bounds of the zoning's requirement of 70%. A couple of the other concerns, I guess, are around the trees or restricted tree canopy planting, the landscape plan that we submitted with the application. I know it's not in the notes or the agenda items, and I'm sure that was an oversight, but that landscape plan does contain 568 plants, including 70 trees that would grow between 5 and 10 metres in height. So we've tried to address that tree canopy planting as well through some significant landscaping to the site. And I guess the final sort of key point that we had taken on notice through our discussions with the council officers was the car parking, and particularly the visitor car parking. We felt that given we controlled the site next door where the childcare centre is going, and we effectively controlled the whole frontage of Griffith Street between Inglis and Powlett, that the 60 metres in front of the childcare centre on Griffith Street service lane would adequately provide for any visitor spaces. I think you could easily fit 6 to 8 visitor car parks there that wouldn't be used by the childcare centre, because the childcare centre wouldn't be operating at the same time we'd expect those visitors there, and the childcare centre has got more than enough car parks in its own right regardless. So yeah, we feel it's a good development, helps address the lack of housing in the area and across the state, and yeah, we'd love to be proceeding with it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Daru. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr Daru?
I have a question.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In our report, Mr Daru, it notes that this is set for an appeal at VCAT on the 14th and 15th of August this year, with the compulsory conference on the 5th of June. It also notes the applicant for review has indicated they intend to substitute plans. What do you intend to substitute? Is it a reduction in the number of dwellings or what, please?
We have prepared some plans without prejudice, and we have taken on some of the feedback that has been given, and yeah, we would be open, or those plans are open to a reduction in some of the dwellings, a small reduction. We've also taken into consideration some feedback around the garages on Inglis Street, and how we can address perhaps making them a little bit less prominent in the development and the facades on Inglis Street.
Absolutely.
Yep. Councillor Sullivan.
Have those plans been actually forwarded through to council, as you say, without prejudice or not?
Not yet.
Okay.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. My concern here is that there's a lot of VCAT in this when really, under normal circumstances, these matters would be deferred until we got an outcome from VCAT. I note in the conditions that they want the Development Assessment Committee to put a position to VCAT. To my way of thinking, this appears to be putting the cart in front of the horse. My other concern is that we've introduced documentation that doesn't exist within this, that we don't have a copy of anyway. So, and I'm not sure that's appropriate either. So I'm just not sure why this is here. I think this has got a long way to go in a lot of other areas before it comes back here.
Mr Bazudnowd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll hand over to Mr Lavelle just to explain the VCAT process and why it's before council.
Yeah, so there are timelines in place where council's actually got to form a position whether to approve or not approve the application. VCAT will need to know that before, for example, any compulsory conference, because a compulsory conference could consider a mediated result.
Councillor Tatchell.
Understanding that, Mr Lavelle, but I suppose my concern is that we're prejudicing both the DAC and VCAT by pushing that into this position when in relative terms it's an unfinished project or an unfinished symphony. And I think that will confuse the issue even more. So whilst I accept that we are obligated to do things within a certain time, they have to be complete, or they have to be holistic, so they could be either rejected or approved.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Dudzik?
Through the Mayor, my question for the applicant is, why are you asking us to approve this application tonight when you already have revised plans that you intend to present to VCAT? To me, that's ridiculous. And why are you going to VCAT before you've even given us a chance to consider your plans?
We've made revised plans on the basis of the feedback we've had from the council officers, and their report, which says that they're suggesting not to support our approval. So it's a long time to get an approval. We own the site, we'd like to activate it, and as I said, I'd like to activate more housing in the area. I grew up in a small country town myself, and I've got a personal passion for it. So we want to see an outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Tatchell?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation that's been put forward.
I'll second it.
No further questions. Mr Daru, thank you for your attention tonight.
Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Tatchell. So we actually have, yes, we have a recommendation of refusal, moved by Councillor Tatchell.
No, it's not a refusal, it's to
to not support the planning permit. Moved by Councillor Tatchell, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
Well, if I may, I think basically council has to adopt a position. That's what we've done. We're not refusing an application. This has been taken to VCAT by the applicant, and the officers prepared a document to say this would be council's position. So we have to go at that mediation meeting in June, compulsory conference. At least this is council's position. So that's what this is about. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Mr Bazood now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to add to it, the applicant elected to take this to VCAT, so council has to form a position on that we're able to present to VCAT. There is the opportunity for the applicant to have requested an opportunity to amend the plans, to reconsider those before approaching VCAT. So we're dealing with a scenario where we have to have a formal position, and anything that's introduced via the VCAT process, we will bring back to council for consideration.
Thank you, Mr Bazood now. So just for clarity, councillors, Councillor Tatchell has moved that we advise VCAT it does not support planning permit as presented, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors wish to speak on the motion? All those in favour? No objections, carried. Thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to item 8, which is an update of trans issues and other matters. And I'll now ask the Executive Manager, Community Planning and Development, do you have any updates for the committee?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's no updates.
Thank you. Item number 9, update on VCAT decisions. Again, Mr Bazood now, do you have any updates on VCAT decisions for the committee?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll hand over to Mr Lavelle just to see if there's any recent updates.
No, so we're still waiting on 2 decisions from VCAT at this stage, but they haven't formalised our position, which is 40 Pikes Creek, and the other one is in Gisborne Road.
Can I ask for clarity about Gisborne Road? Which position? Which location was that?
Sorry, through the chair. So, sorry, the Gisborne Road's just been recently lodged, I must add. That's 101 Gisborne, the service station amendment.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just to advise the group that that's a recently lodged VCAT hearing.
Thank you. Just aware that there was a few in Gisborne Road, so I was wondering which one it was. Thank you. Councillors, item number 10 is other business. We'll just go around the table. Councillor Sullivan.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Minari.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Could I just note the passing of Father Bob? He was our ambassador, I think, on 2 occasions. I had a relationship with Bob over a number of years that go back more years than I care to remember. this gentleman has, he had a vision for Springbank that didn't come to fruition, which was in terms of what he was going to do into the future. Bob really was a champion of the people and the downtrodden. Anyone that met Bob, he was infectious in a lot of ways. And if I could just share a small story with you, and I keep a photo in my office that was given to me by Bob through a lawyer in Melbourne, and we were at a boxing match at TV Ringside once, and there was a young boy in there with his first fight, and he climbed through the ring, and I was with Bob and this lawyer, and the kid put his feet in the sandbox and then put his hands together to pray, and Bob turned around to me, he says, "I hope he's praying for a miracle because the kid can't fight." and I have to say his time in Moorabool and the time I spent with him with the two Nissan brothers, who one of them gave up the family fortune to start the food bus in Melbourne, or the soup bus as it was known, and you could go down to Swanson Street any night of the week and you'd see Bobby and a couple of old punch-drunk fighters handing that soup to people that were down on their luck. And I have to say, when I heard the news today, I was deeply saddened by the loss of a true gentleman, a person that is a beacon for everything that's decent, and just one of those people that I was always happy to be around.
Here, Councillor Tatchell, he'll certainly be missed, and he certainly benefited the lives of many people in our great state. Councillor Berry, any other business?
No other business, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Dudzik?
No other business, Mr Mayor.
I have no other business. Oh, pardon me, Councillor Edwards.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, David.
You're right, Rod, any thought, mate, no drama.
With that, councillors, the date of our next meeting is Wednesday the 17th of May, and the meeting will be closed. Thank you.